Hi. Yes, we are in week 4, and it definitely feels like this might have been the hardest week since week 1. We're really in the thick of it, and it's coming to an end soon, which is both exciting and scary at the same time. Um, I like that you're doing pre-K. I think that's adorable. And it's interesting because it's like, I'm like looking at your lesson plan, and I wouldn't even know what to do with kids this age. Like, being in secondary, it's so easy for me, like, oh, you should already know this, so let's get off, like, here's our jumping point. Like, I don't understand, um, or I guess I was never trained to understand how to teach that young of students, and, like, how to teach students from scratch. Like, oh, they don't know how to read yet, they don't know how to do this yet, but we're going to teach them how to be good friends. And, like, I don't know where to begin with that, but I think that's great that you can do that. The overpopulation barrier, um, also a barrier in my school district, but not because we're Title I. It's mostly because we're growing too fast to even have space for some students. Like we have like special education teachers that are like reading specialists and things like that are working out of like offices and trying to fit small groups into an office versus a classroom because we're just like running out of room. But I like that you specified that you worked at a Title I school because that creates its own set of like barriers in terms of overpopulation and not having enough teachers to do that work. And so I definitely think that is going to be hard, especially also, like you mentioned, the time constraint of having a counselor that has to go into multiple different classrooms to teach this lesson. And I wonder if there would be a way for you to do like, hey, we're going to take the preschoolers down to the library and we'll teach the lesson there in order to kind of get it through. But that also probably creates a barrier in itself because like just like teenagers cannot sit still and control themselves, it's going to be hard to manage a bunch of preschoolers and get them all to listen at the same time, depending on how many preschool classes you are or you have. So I'm not 100% sure what the best scenario would be, but yes, I completely understand that those are barriers. I think it's interesting you mentioned that the lesson plans are usually pretty easy to mimic in Spanish. They're easy to translate because there's less words. But it's hard to find Spanish versions of books. And I have never thought about that because by the time they're in secondary education, we don't really have, we don't have Spanish versions of STAR anymore or things like that, especially for social studies. And so that never really crossed my mind, and I haven't really worked with any like students that are like new to English. And so I haven't had to experience that personally. So I like that you mentioned that because that brought up just a whole other barrier that I wasn't even aware of, based off of the schools I've taught in. And so that is awesome that you bring it up so that way I can be aware of it for future schools. What else? Yeah, I think I'm with you on that one too. Like, even though it wasn't something I was aware of, it's really hard to teach the same lesson with different books. Even if you can find a book that's in Spanish that's related to the same topic as the other book, it's going to be hard to teach that same lesson and get them to have similar outcomes if you're using 2 different books versus just a Spanish version of a book. So I do hope it becomes easier over time to find those resources. I love that in your lesson you're doing a video and then a book and then a coloring activity. Because especially when we talk about engagement at all levels, not just elementary or secondary, like all levels, we always talk about different types of engagement for students and how students don't all learn the same way. And so I think it's great that some students might not enjoy watching a video as entertaining as Sesame Street is, but they might enjoy a book more, and that's going to catch on for them. Or they might not care about either because they just want to, like, they're antsy, they want to move around a little bit, and coloring allows them to have that kind of like fidget mindset or that fidget activity to get their body moving. And so I think it's great that you have 3 different ways of addressing the topic in that lesson. And so I think you did a great job.